Nicomachean ethics is quite difficult. It's not easy, especially your first time reading it, to follow the line of argument that Aristotle develops throughout the work. But there is a fairly clear line of argument. And what I'm going to be doing in these videos is trying to help you understand what that argument is, what his ideas are. To be very quick about it and kind of uninformative about it, but here's a way to start thinking about his project. Aristotle is trying to figure out what the highest good is. That's the project of the Nicomachean ethics. Well, what does that mean? How does he even begin doing that? Right? Those things we'll address in due course. What we're going to talk about in this video is some kind of Aristotle's very general ideas just about what this concept, the highest good, what that even means, what he's even getting at. So Aristotle begins by giving us some examples to try to start shedding light on what this highest good is. His example is of it's horses, bridle making, and we'll get to his example in a second. It's not the clearest thing in the world, though. Let me use a different example. Let's take something you're all doing right now. You are watching this video. Okay, so don't worry about Aristotle for the time being, right? We'll get to that in a second. You're watching this video. Okay, fine, right? That's obvious. Well, why are you doing that? Why are you watching this video? Well, presumably, I don't know exactly what your answer is. Presumably, it's not for entertainment. It's to learn the material, right? There's certain material that you have to learn about Aristotle. You're watching the video to learn that material, right? The assigned material. The ruthless and tyrant in charge of the class, said you need to learn about Aristotle. And so, okay, fine, I'll learn the material. Well, why do you want to learn the material, right? Well, to pass the class, right? I'm the one in charge of handing out grades. I say I'm the one who decides what the exams are going to be on. Aristotle is going to be on the exam. And so you've got to learn the material so you can, or you might say, pass the exam so that you can pass the class, right? And so you're watching the video to learn the material so that you can pass the class. That seems fairly straightforward. Well, why do you want to pass the class, however? Why on earth would you want to do that? Of all the things you could be spending your time doing, why is that one of them? Well, you want a degree. And the people who hand out the degrees with the stamp and whatever, with the fancy writing on or whatever, they won't write your name all fancy on one of those pieces of paper. They won't use that little stamp seal thing and give you one of those really fancy sheets of paper unless you pass Phil 182 or whatever. You satisfy all your requirements, right? They say you've got to take these classes and you have to pass them. Otherwise, you don't get this piece of paper. And you really want that piece of paper. Well, okay. So that's why you're watching the video. You're watching the video, learn the material, pass the class, so you can get the degree at the end of the day. Well, geez, I don't know. That's an awfully expensive sheet of paper there that you're trying to procure. Everyone, you get loans or whatever, or you get a discount rate from the university. But if you don't do anything like that, it's like, I don't know, like $250,000 to get that sheet of paper. Now, I don't know. It seems to me like unless it's unless that sheet of paper is a $250,000 bill, it seems like you might argue that's a bad investment. Why would you spend that much on a sheet of paper? Why do you want this degree? Who cares about that? Who cares about these fancy sheets of paper? Well, clearly, you might say, well, I want to get the degree so I can get a job, right? That's why I'm trying to get this degree, because, when I go down into those big fancy skyscrapers down in Chicago or wherever, the people there, they're the ones that have the jobs, and they won't give one to me unless I show them one of these fancy sheets of paper. So I want to get the fancy sheet of paper so that I can go get this job from those people downtown or whatever, right? Something like that. So that might be your reasoning. And so you're watching this video to learn the material, to pass the class, to get a degree, to get a job. And so in some sense, you're watching this video so that, years down the road, or I don't know, whatever, sometime down the road, you can get a job. That's kind of the idea. And that's what's motivating you to watch this video and to do your studies and so on. You're watching this video for the sake of getting a job eventually down the road, right? You might call what I've kind of laid out there a for the sake of chain. You watch the video for the sake of learning the material, which you do for the sake of passing the class, and so on, right? This is the kind of thing that Aristotle is talking about in the first chapter of the Nicomachean Ethics. Now, let's consider a change. A job, I don't know, what is a job? You go and you sit in an office in a cubicle and you got these buzzing fluorescent lights above you and you got 5 bosses who come and tell you what to do and they're never happy. And, and you just sit at your computer typing all that. And man, that sounds horrible. I don't want that anymore. Let's say after my vivid description of what work life is like, you decide, you know what? I'm not doing that. I don't want to get a job anymore. Right? Cross that one out. Don't want it anymore. I'm just gonna, I don't know what you do. I'm gonna go be a hermit off in the woods. I'm just gonna go rough it and I don't care. Okay, fine. Well, if really the main or primary or only reason that you're getting a degree is to get a job, if you all of a sudden say, you know what, I don't want a job, I don't want anything like that, well, then it no longer makes any sense to go get the degree, right? That's no longer a very good investment. At that $250,000 sheet of paper no longer makes a whole lot of sense if the value in it lay in the fact that it gets you a job, or a higher paying job, which it does still, right? It's still a good investment to go to college. You make a lot more money over the course of your career, right? If that's the kind of thing you're interested in. Okay, so if you give up on going to get a job, you may as well give up on getting a degree. And if you no longer want to get a degree, well, then it doesn't matter if you pass that class. Who cares about doing that, right? That doesn't matter. You only wanted to pass the class because the people who have the degrees will give you a degree and will write your name on one only if you pass the class. But now you don't care about the degree, so why do you care about passing the class? That shouldn't be something you're particularly concerned with. But if you're not concerned with passing the class, you shouldn't be concerned with learning the material. And if you're not concerned with learning the material, it doesn't really make any sense to be watching this video anymore. All right, so I'm going to see in a bunch of on the YouTube analytics, a bunch of people stop watching the video right at this point. Maybe, I don't know. When you give up on the higher order or higher level goods, goals, it no longer makes sense to do the things that you're doing for the sake of them, right? You don't want the job anymore. It doesn't really make any sense to watch the video anymore. If your primary reason for watching the video is to eventually get the job down the road, right? Bring in Aristotle's example to this. So he doesn't talk about watching videos on YouTube, as you might imagine. He talks about bridle making, right? So he says, and bridles are like I always forget what this is. It's like the steering part of a horse. It's the thing you put on a horse's head and helps. It's like the steering wheel of a horse, I'm pretty sure. So look, we make those things. We make those things that you put on horses' heads to control them, according to Aristotle. And, well, I don't know, just according to common sense. We make those things so that we can ride horses, right? So bridle making is for the sake of horse riding. And if all of a sudden we decided that we don't want to ride horses anymore, it would make no sense to make bridles, right? So the thing that we just kind of saw. And Aristotle continues, look, we want to ride horses for the sake of what he calls strategy. Now, that might seem a little bit odd. What he has in mind is kind of war strategy. And back in Aristotle's day, they wouldn't ride horses for fun. Or, they didn't have equestrian shows or things like that, ride horses over little bars or whatever they do. You rode horses because there was a military advantage to it. You had the cavalry regimen. And so that's why you rode horses. And so that's Aristotle's idea. If all of a sudden we became pacifists or whatever, or there was world peace and there were never any war, well, it wouldn't make sense to engage in horse riding anymore. If the sole purpose of horse riding is to help us fight wars, which for Aristotle and during his day it was. Right? So if we're not going to engage in wars, it makes no sense to ride horses anymore. And if it doesn't make any sense to ride horses anymore, it doesn't make any sense to make bridles. That's Aristotle's example of the thing that we've just been looking at, right? That's his example. Okay, now let's return to this tree. Let's add a few more, layers to it, if you will, because, it doesn't end at getting a job. I don't know, that description I just gave of a job, you have the buzzing fluorescent lights and whatever, a million bosses telling you what to do. And that sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. But why do you do it? Why do you want one of those? And wouldn't you rather just go hang out on the beach or in the mountains or I don't know what you like? Well, no, because you need money, right? And so I want to get the job at the big skyscraper downtown because they got a lot of money down there. And if I do stuff for them, they give me that money, or at least some of it, not all of it. And so I want to get the job so that I can have some money. Yeah. Well, look, why do you want money? That's just, chunks of metal and weird, durable, smelly paper or what. I don't know what it is, right? Why do you want that? And presumably we could list something else, right? And so I'm not going to put anything in particular there. ... Fill that in with whatever, we could keep going and we can keep going, right? Why do you want that? Why do you want that? Why do you want that? Eventually, however, according to Aristotle, we have to come to an end somewhere. This process can't go on forever. If it went on forever, which is impossible, but if it did, we wouldn't actually want anything because there'd be no definite goal that we were aiming at. Moreover, Aristotle seems to think it's just a psychological impossibility. This just isn't how human minds are geared. Humans are motivated by kind of definite goals, not just an infinite chain of goals, right? So there has to be some end. Aristotle calls that end the highest good. Wherever it is that these chains end, that thing is the highest good. Be a little bit more specific. Wherever they should end. Because what Aristotle thinks, wherever they should end, that's the highest good. Aristotle thinks that people can be wrong about the highest good, right? Some people, for instance, and we'll look at this in a subsequent video, some people might take money, which I have down here as not being the highest good. Some people might take money to be the highest good. Aristotle would say they're wrong, right? You can be wrong about what the highest good is. The project of the ethics is to figure out what it is so that we're not wrong about it. Because according to Aristotle, all of the actions that we engage in, everything that we do in some way or other ought to be aimed at the true highest good. Even something so mundane as watching a video on YouTube or whatever, everything should be ordered to this thing, the highest good. And at this point in the ethics, the highest good, that phrase is just a placeholder for whatever's up at the top of this tree. This chain, this for the sake of chain, has to end somewhere. Wherever it ends, that's the highest good. Now, Aristotle says, even knowing this about the highest good, we can say some more things about it. First, let me say, Aristotle uses a variety of terminology. So he refers not just to the highest good, he also talks about the chief good or the supreme good or the best good or the human good. They're all the same thing. They're just different words for the same thing. It's the thing that's up at the top of these chains or this tree, whatever you want to call it, right? So you find a variety of terminology in Aristotle, which can be kind of confusing, but he's talking about the same thing. Okay. Knowing that the highest good, whatever else it is, whatever we should be aiming at as we live our lives, knowing that the highest good is up at the top of the tree, we can say something else about it. We know that the highest good is final or complete. It gets described both ways by Aristotle. Final, complete. He means something very specific by that. He uses final or complete here in a technical sense. Something is final, a good, a goal is final if it's choice-worthy for its own sake and not choice-worthy for the sake of anything else. So there are two components to it. A good is final if it's choice-worthy for its own sake and not for the sake of anything else. So consider something like learning the material. That was down there on the tree, right? Aristotle would say that's not final. And so learning the material can't be the highest good because it's not final. Well, why isn't learning the material final? Let's say it is choice-worthy for its own sake. Let's say it is choice, it's good just to know the material. And that's choice-worthy just in and of itself, right? So let's say it meets that first condition of finality. Aristotle would say it is not final. It doesn't meet that second condition of finality, however, right? Because as we can see from that chain, from this tree, we learn the material in order to pass the class. That means learning the material is choice-worthy for the sake of something else, namely passing the class. And so learning the material, even if it's choice-worthy for its own sake, even if it's just good to know things, right? It's also choice-worthy for the sake of something else, and so it's not final. By contrast, if you look up at the highest good at the top of the chain, it's going to be choice-worthy for its own sake. Well, why think that? Because everything else you're doing to get it, right? And if it weren't choice-worthy for its own sake, you wouldn't do other things to get it, right? So it's going to be choice-worthy for its own sake, but it's not going to be choice-worthy for the sake of anything else. Well, why not? Because if it were, there'd be something up above it. There'd be another arrow coming out of it to something else, the thing that is choice-worthy for the sake of. But by definition, the highest good, whatever else it is, who knows, right? There's nothing else up above it on these chains or trees. There's no other arrow coming up above it. If there were, it wouldn't be the highest good, right? It'd be like one of these lower items. But the highest good, by definition, is up at the top. And so it's not choice-worthy for the sake of anything else. And so the highest good, whatever else it is final. This is going to be very important when Aristotle comes to evaluating candidates for the highest good. Because one of the things that Aristotle is going to do is say something like, well, you think the highest good is money? Some people seem to think that. Is money final? If it's not, well, then money can't be the highest good. And so this criterion of finality ends up being a way for Aristotle to eliminate answers for what the highest good is. And it becomes a way for him to kind of hone in on what the highest good could possibly be, because whatever else it is, it has to be final.